one has been the developments since the release of version 1 of S100. And I should maybe introduce myself a little bit first. I currently live in Canada. I am a Norwegian. So if there's something you don't understand of my English, I can explain it to you in Norwegian. My wife is from the Philippines, so I feel a little bit of attachment to this region. And my kids are born in Canada, so I have a very international family. I have participated with IHO activities for the last 11 years. And you may have sensed a little bit of cynicism from Lee in his presentation, and I tend to share his cynicism. And the more I'm involved, the more disappointed, I think would be the right word, I am about the process. Because it's not going in the direction that I had hoped when we first started with S57 version 4. We thought we were making the new ENC standard, and we would fix the problems and the known issues. Now, 11 years later, what do we have? We have the beginning of something very big, something very good, but it's taken a very long time to get here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening now to advance S100. And I think what Young said earlier, his question, his statement on the use of S100 may not necessarily be the ENCs, but it will be the other uses of S100 based data that will be happening. And that's why I have the undertitle, The Emergence of Value-Added Data. So, S100 was developed using the experience that was gained from S57 and ECDIS development. And like I said, it was originally intended to be the version 4 of S57. So what this has done is that the people that have been involved with the development have had a ENC and ECDIS-centric mentality. I'm not saying this is wrong or bad. It's just these are the people that were involved, and therefore, like all, we tend to stay with what is familiar. And we developed S100 with a very strong focus on the ENC. And that is very evident in S100 version 1. And the drawback with this is that the value-added data that we keep hearing, and my personal belief is the value-added data is what will sell S100 to the world. The drawback is that the value-added data has a bit of a struggle fitting in with S100. To work to overcome these challenges, there have been some changes, and a major driver behind these changes have been the SNPWIC working group. And the reason for this is that the general feature model, the GFM is standard as a short for the general feature model, and that's the base structure of what S100 supports when you want to model something. This model does not very well support the model of data modeling that SNPWIC has arrived at being the best way to produce nautical publications. So to try to do something about this, together with SNPWIC, myself and my colleagues have proposed some changes to S100, and we had to do 2 rounds because, like I said earlier, the people that were the heavy drivers behind S100, they had an ENC mentality. And during the first round, we got about 90% of what SNPWIC needed. They didn't want to give that extra 10% because it didn't fit with their view of what an ENC does. That of course meant that we had to do a second round and get a little bit more argument for the changes. So here is the general feature model of S100 version 1. And after I'm done, we'll do a test, so you have to reproduce this. I'm joking, okay? You can laugh. What this one basically says, it talks about how we can have a feature type, we can associate the feature types with each other, we can have an information type, and we can associate that with the feature type. The thing that Snippig wanted was they put a lot of emphasis on this, because information types are types of data objects that carry information that can be shared between feature types, or it can be expressing more detail on a particular area. But you would also, in the information, in an article publication sense, you would want to be able to go from one information type to the next. In this model, you cannot do that. You can only go from there to there, not from there to the next one. And this drawback was the first challenge we had to overcome.
Hey, excuse me, is this XML?
No, this is UML.
UML.
Yes. So, the first change we did was this. This was a group effort with a lot of TSMAD members. And in this sense, we got the association here, so we could associate between different information types. The challenge here, and we could also add attributes to the association, so we could explain more what the link was. So we could say that a restriction was based on this regulation. Or we could start a regulation and say it caused these restrictions. In the previous model, this is not possible. And with this, these changes over here, we are now able to do that. And let me just see if I remember here. Yes, we did a very small change. Here. You see it's a 0 to 2 here. Because over here there was an insistence from the ENC people that the link from two information types must always be more information. So from the starting point it's more information, and at the end point you explain what the link is. It would always have to be more information. We didn't agree with that. So therefore, after a lot of arguing, we finally got this one to a 0, so we could say we don't have to have more information, or we could name it in one way or the other, depending on what we wanted. So these look like small trivial changes, but they are actually quite significant in allowing us to do what we want to do. And remember, this is all within IHO. What has happened now is that S100 has been released to the world. And the world has said, yes, please. So Ayala is now revving up, getting ready to use it. And other organizations like the Inland People and so on. And they all will come with potentially small changes like this to be able to do what they want to do. And this is a challenge for IHO, because IHO has always been inward looking. However, the good thing is, I don't think Lee pointed it out, but with the versioning of S100, the way it is done, that means that you can make an IHO prior specification, compliant with one version of S100, and S100 can keep on living and developing, and it doesn't break your product specification. And that's a big difference from S57. Because with S57, everything is bundled into one, and if you change something in one part, all of it has to change. So there are cascading effect of any change. Whereas with S100, you are much more free to do changes in the base standards, and it doesn't affect those product specifications that are already developed and issued. Another problem with S100 version 1 is that it contains no portrayal. This is a main reason why we cannot issue S101 today. There exists no portrayal, so you cannot say this is how a buoy is to be displayed in S101 because there is no standard for how to do it. There are many reasons why this is the case. A prime reason is the ISO 19117 standard, which is the portrayal standard. There was a lot of debate and discussion early on, and the previous version had some small quirks that were not quite supported by what IHO wanted to do for ENC portrayal. However, last year, a new version of 19117 was issued, and now it does support what we want to do. However, to make things more complicated, in the meantime, because the first version of 19117 did not support what ENCs needed, there were intermediate discussions and solutions proposed within TSMAT. The first solution was proposed in such a way that it was the development of a whole new programming language with maybe 2 people in the world that understood it. How that's going to work for an international standard, I don't know. So I put up a very, very strong opposition to it. I stepped on some toes, some people got hurt, and we ended up with 2 opposing ideas. One was based on XSLT, which is the schema language for XML, and the other one was based on the OGC standard for it's called SLD. I don't remember exactly what the term was, but after a lot of discussion back and forth, the decision fell on the XSLT approach. I was not in favor of this proposal, but it was the majority vote for going this way. It's a whole new method of using XSLT, so it will be quite interesting to see where it ends up in the long run. However, the decision has been made, and now TSMAT is working on developing this path. And the first step is that we, in March, had a working group that we held in Louisenburg that I hosted for the subgroup, where we developed the portrayal model, which is this one, and took the whole document a little bit further, but it wasn't quite ready. So one of the things that have been taunted by S100 is that there will be a portrayal catalog builder, and that is to make the portrayal of product specifications using S100 an easier task than it is with S52 today. I'm currently involved with the development of S57, S52 Presentation Library 4.0, and let me tell you, that's a very painful process. So the idea is that this portrayal catalog builder will make that process simpler by having a feature with certain attribute categories and associating that with a type of portrayal, and let the background application, develop the the Potrel catalog, and then you'll be able to send it out with your product specification, as opposed to the way it is now, where you have to write 500 pages. The Potrel Catalog Builder has been sent out in a tender, and the tender was awarded in June of this year to Keras, and they are going to develop this catalog builder for IHO. So that's basically the standard today. A little bit closer on the Potrel process. This is how the Potrel will work in S100. Feature data, so whatever data this is, this could be the ENC, for example, will be inputted into a Potrel engine, where the Potrel view is a converted version. You can call it a sync for of this input data. So whatever the format is here is irrelevant, because there will be a conversion to go into this Potrel view. Here there will be a comparison with an XSLT processor, which takes into use the user parameters, such as if you want traditional symbology, or the paper chart symbology, or what your safety contour is, or whatever, your scale and so on, together with the rules for Potrel, and then you get drawing engines, and that's sent to the screen, and you get something rendered on the screen. Furthermore, with S100, we only have one type of encoding, and that is ISO 8211. It's the same, yes? You mean this part here? That will be a how exactly it is to be done is yet to be defined. There is both the option of going with the data, and there's also the option of being a download section at IHO website. Nobody really knows yet, because the Potrel instructions is quite a bit more complicated than data. And some OEMs have said, we would like to have the opportunity to go in and test the presentation library before it is issued to the machines in the field. So this again goes to Lee's question about plug and play. The OEMs are uncertain whether this plug and play approach can work in a safe and secure manner. So it remains to be seen. Yeah, 8211. The 8211 that you have in S57 does not equal the 8211 you have in S100. Because of the changes in the general feature model, the two are different. There are different instructions. That means that your production system today could not issue S101 ENCs, even though the encapsulation is the same. Lee also pointed out that 8211 is a very old technology. It is probably 30 years old. But for some reason we still use it. I cannot give you a good answer to why, but you know, it's comfy with what you know. However, particularly SNPWIG, but also the UN with their Dualos initiative, which is the limits of the sea, have said 8211 doesn't work for us. We need GML. And what is happening now is that TSMAD have acknowledged that this is actually a valid claim, and UKHO has contracted a company called Snowflake to produce a S100 version of GML that will go into the next version. So that increases the usability of S100 for other types of data. Furthermore, unique identifiers. This is something you know as FOIDs, F-O-I-D in S57. Guess what? There's no such concept in S100. So when the work with S101 came along, they realized, whoops, we forgot something. So this was then suggested again, mainly by Snipwig, to be an addition for the next version. There are a number of reasons why you would want to have unique identifiers. Within the ENC, there's only one place you use the FOIDs. Today, there's only one place the S57 ENC use the FOIDs, and that is between the links of collection objects. So when you want to collect or bundle a range, so back object, front object, leading line, traffic separation, recommended track, you collect them as a range. The FOID is the method that you do the collection by. Within the ENC itself, most of the pointers are done by the record identifiers. So this was done in S101. It's quite easy. The encapsulation covers it, but when it came to unique identifiers for the world, the concept was not supported. And initially, the Nautical publications had the idea that instead of reproducing the ENC information within Nautical publication, they would simply point to ENC features. Without unique identifiers, that's impossible. You can't do it. So therefore, this was proposed to be done, and it has now been developed as a proposal and will go into the next version of S100. One thing, when we talk about value-added data, is that you want to be very clear on the value of unique identifiers. You can define it, or you can say, we don't have to define it. However, the implication of not adding it to a price specification is that you are eliminating the possibility of others to reuse your data. And the implication of that is that if somebody want to use some data that you have issued, they would have to reproduce that data. And that causes a problem when you, for example, bring the same data into the same system. So if you take a nautical publication that reproduces some of the ENC data together with an ENC in an ECDIS, you get two instances of the same thing in the same screen. Now, what is the mariner supposed to do with that? Will he call that an improvement? I'm not so sure. So the unique identifiers is a one step on the road to hopefully improve that situation and make that not necessary. I pointed out when Lee was presenting the GI registry, the concept of main and supplementary registries has been abandoned, and this was a direct request from IALA. They felt that it was not correct to have this supplementary for their stuff because they felt they were then not equal to IHO. So for political reasons, IHO agreed, and they have abandoned the concept of main and supplementary for one flat registry. That gives equal level to all new registries.
Has this been
Yes,
by
it's
IHO?
it's already done in the new version of S99. And I believe it was agreed to at the last HSSC meeting. And the hope, of course, is that by doing this change, IHO is saying, it's being understood as saying, we treat everybody equal, all are equal within the registry. And Lee pointed a little bit to it at the end of his presentation, this S100 master plan. Is a new thing that has been developed. It was presented at the last year's MAD meeting in Silver Spring back in June. And the plan notes, originally intended to cover geospatial data only, it appears that S100 concepts could be enhanced to all aspects of shipping and maritime domain at large, including modeling non-spatial information, e.g. pilot requests, regulatory information, and user requirements. That is very big because it covers everything. You think about it, this opens the door for everything. So it may be a little bit big. There may be some need to restrict that a little bit, but we will see. That's what the master plan says at the moment. It also lays out the long-term goals and the objectives for the development of S100. And I will not go into it in detail more than this. You simply will have to go to the TSMAD website and download and read it for yourself. It's a couple of pages long. And furthermore, there is the beginning steps of an S100 testbed. You may have heard that there's been talk about an S101 testbed. There has been, what should we call it, disagreement between the chair and the vice chair on this. And I think the chair of TSMAD has won out. That is now called an S100 testbed. I think this is also a significant change because it shows that TSMAD has broadened their worldview beyond the ENCs in the paper chart to see that it is actually S100 we need to test. S101 is simply the base layer. We already have the equivalent of S101, so S101 in itself doesn't bring anything new. Therefore, S100 as a whole is what we need to test, and in particular, the interaction between different product specifications. And this week, actually right now, there are people meeting in Taunton in England to discuss this test plan strategy. And that was the last slide. So if you have any questions, otherwise let's rush to the bus. Come on, Lee, I know you want to.
We have 4 more days.
In your last presentation, you were asking under testbed. You said IHO and industry. Who gonna involve in this particular staff? IHO and then industry who? Is Actis Wien or?
At the meeting, there is member states. There are distributors. Jeppesen is present. UKHO is there. NOAA is there. Furuno, Transas, so Actis OEMs are there. I believe Keras is there. IIC is there. So it's quite a broad representation of different sectors of the industry.
There is one of the plan on TSMAD for this May
This meeting is by TS Mad.
Yes, ma'am. Is there any announce to maybe like some of our the Korean industry, some company they quite interesting the test bed,
Yep.
but don't know. Yeah.
The meeting in particular is not the beginning of the test bed. The meeting is to discuss the strategy for the test bed and what tests to run. So my understanding is that once that foundation is laid, the IHB will make a broader announcement and probably request industry involvement by a circular letter or by media publication and so on. So I will be very surprised if Korean industry and other countries' industry are not aware of this test bed when it is actually being launched. Then I think IHB has failed, but I don't think that will happen.
Especially in our East Asia region, as I know our member state, we don't know what's going on. So I would think within TSMAR or some countries or some quite specific industry.
Some countries.
Yeah, outside.
What you're alluding to is actually true. There are 2 or 3 countries that are, I guess, what you can call a core clique.
Colonial nations is a better term.
I wasn't going to mention which ones. And they have some industry partners that they include for various reasons, either because they will be screaming if they don't, or because they really like these people.
Collusion is a better word.
Yes. So yes, there is almost a sense of a good old boys club, and it's a pity. I think you're pointing to a very good. You're pointing out something that is not very good, and it's very good that you do.
I think that one of the results of the S1 seminar is that within the IH holds some working group, they some project, like new project. Before they starting project, please announce to the other member states.
Yes.
Right now, just you make some standard or draft regulation. After that, you release. Did you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think you're absolutely right. And what is happening is what used to happen. However, what has happened in the meantime is that the face of the world has changed. It used to be Europe and North America, and the rest of the world didn't matter. That has changed. This is now the hub of the world. And those in Europe, myself included, may not have realized this.
This meeting, is it this week or next week?
It's this week. It's happening right now.
I like, other than you bringing it up today, it's the first I've heard about it.
It was a limited circulation.
It's enough to make my blood boil.
Well, you know who's behind it, so you understand why.
I do.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay. Oh. I just want to say thank you. Okay.
If we're talking about poems industry, active industry, so what if some company wants to develop active or starting active industry? Besides, we follow the ISO standard.
Mm-hmm.
Or such. What should we do to start it?
So if you want to start an Actis company today, you have a very uphill battle because the shipping industry is very traditionalist, and those that are in, they're in. Those that haven't gone in yet, they're going to have a big problem getting in. However, it may be that in some countries, a particular navy, it has an interest in developing their local industry and have a local provider of Actis systems, maybe for security and for reducing risk that the Actis OEM that they have chosen goes belly up, so they can go in and rescue it if there's financial problems and so on. In such cases, then the path is relatively straightforward. I mean, you would have to get the presentation library from IHO. That has a cost to it because the IHO has developed it at a great cost. So you would buy that as a package together with the standards, and you would then have to have software engineers as well as human factors engineers and hardware engineers to put together a package that matches the requirements under the 61174 Actis test standard. So it will probably take you about $10 million, no joke. $10 million as an average cost of a new Actis system, and 2 to 3 years.
So what about later when S100 fly?
When S101 comes, you have to do the whole process again, another $10 million. So, what you're bringing up is something very interesting. And that's to do with the cost of moving to S101. We now have 15 to 20 Actis OEMs that have to develop a whole new Actis to work with S101. Now, multiply $10 million each. You're looking at $200 million just to have the Actis systems available. Add to that training costs, because it's not exactly the same. So you would have to do at least the type-specific training. You have to do that again. You, as a hydrographic office, your production system does not support S101. You need a new production system. Your people need to be retrained because S101 is not entirely the same as S7. And your data needs to be converted at a cost. So just within that little circle, I'm not talking about buying the new equipment now, you're looking at maybe $500 million. So the bubble starts going. So, yeah, that's the fun of change. It's not free. Any other questions? Not to scare you or anything, but there's no problems, just challenges. This is one of them.